Hi, welcome to Bake to the Future, the show where we examine what is happening in the baking industry with a future-focused lens. I'm Katie Jewell, and today we're bringing you a special episode with ABA Premium Allied member Kerry. Kerry started as a small dairy company in Ireland and has grown into a global multinational company in just 50 years, with products including dairy, ingredients, flavors, and much more. Kerry's on a mission to create a world of sustainable nutrition through preservation and functional ingredients for shelf life extension to reduce the amount of food waste. Today, I'm talking with Vivien Sheehan, Kerry's Vice President of Business Development, Proteins, Proactive Health and Functional Technologies, and Emma Cahill, Kerry's Global Marketing Director.
Hi, Katie. Nice to be with you today.
So lovely to have both of you on the show. So I always like to start the show with the hardest questions. And I'll pick, I'll tell you who I'm talking to. We'll start with you, Emma. What is your favorite baked good?
Oh, Katie, it's a toss-up for me. I lived in Paris for about a decade, so I'm super nostalgic. So it's like warm French baguette with salted butter or a croissant. I think they're essentially the same thing anyway.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong with either. What about you, Vivien?
I would echo Emma, but with a slight twist with the chocolate croissant that's heated. Love that.
Love that. All right. And so before we get into the conversation and talking about what you guys do and solutions that Kerry has regarding that can help with food waste, we haven't had you guys on the show. We haven't had Kerry on the show. And I love to hear how people got to where they are today in the baking industry. So Vivien, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do now and how you got there and really why you chose the baking industry to work in?
Sure. So I am a food science graduate from University College Cork in Ireland with a PhD in food microbiology. And shortly after graduating, I applied for a job with Kerry in Ireland with the intention of living near my parents forever and ever. And during the interview, Kerry suggested that I consider moving to our Rochester, Minnesota facility, where we've got a fermentation capability. So they asked me to move for a year, and that was 15 years ago. So one husband, 3 children later, I am now based here in Beloit, Wisconsin, where Kerry has its North American technology and innovation headquarters.
What was it that then got you into food science in the first place? Why did you decide that as a career?
I think, when I was in school, science was always a passion of mine. And also, I would say a lot of my siblings and my cousins all studied science. So I think it was almost in my genes that I would pursue a career or at least academia in the science field. I was always very curious. And I also had a very interesting PhD project, which was putting probiotics into food applications and looking at their robustness through different processing conditions. So it was very much moving into Kerry was a very logical transition for me.
Very cool. I love hearing that. And Emma, what about you? How did you get to where you are today?
So today I'm Kerry's Global Marketing Director for our food protection and preservation business, and I'm an unnatural marketer. I don't know if I would have believed you that this is where my career would go. I have a degree in agricultural science, and I worked in the horse industry and the sports medical industry before returning to food and doing a master's in marketing. So I joined Kerry about 7 years into my career. And I started at the Kerry Health and Nutrition Institute and was passionate about joining the dots between academic research and industry. So I'm more of a math and science nerd than a creative marketer. And over time, my focus deepened in preservation, and I became particularly passionate about bakery because I felt it was the easier place to understand all the hard microbiology stuff that Vivien knows all about. So yeah, and have progressed that into sort of food waste elimination in that space because it's such an important difference that we can make with our ingredients as Kerry.
That is an interesting journey. I'm wondering kind of the differences between working with horses and baking. It's a big change.
I think baking is less stressful, more therapeutic.
That is true. So you both come from different backgrounds, and I and I think that you come to both as scientists, which I think is also very, very cool. And we call this show Bake to the Future, and we like to talk about the baking industry as it stands now, but more importantly, where we see things in 5 years. And I do want to keep our conversation kind of focused in on food waste. And I'm wondering, from your guys' scientific perspective, where might we be in 5 years with food waste, and kind of what's happening now with ingredients that might be just normal run-of-the-mill stuff in 5 years?
So I can start. Kerry are global leaders in the production of conventional and clean label antimicrobials. And in the case for bakery applications, propionate, as an example, is an ingredient that could be derived from biological fermentation processes and also produced from chemical processes. And it's really key for antimicrobial. It's a really key antimicrobial for bakery for mold control. And I think we continue to push the boundaries in terms of how can we produce ingredients that have greater potency, a cleaner flavor, potent at higher pHs to really extend the shelf life to limit food waste. Because bakery is the highest volume of the food waste category out there that we need to address. So I think Kerry collectively is looking at all aspects of the bakery item in terms of how can we further optimize, whether it's the flavor, the texture, the mouthfeel, mold-free shelf life, to make sure that it is that we're maximizing essentially the shelf life of it. And I think one area of key focus for Kerry is fermentation as a key manufacturing process. We produce multiple ingredients that are fermentation derived. So antimicrobials, as I've mentioned, enzymes, probiotics, yeast extracts, vinegars, postbiotics, etc. And I think it is key in terms of our innovation aspirations as a process to produce new, exciting ingredients that have further functionalities to extend shelf life and limit food waste.
So I want to go back to something you said that I have never heard before, and that is the baking industry or bread products being the highest volume of food waste. Can you, do you have some info on that, either of you guys?
I'm so surprised you've never heard that before.
No, I can honestly say I've never heard that before.
Okay.
And I would love to hear more.
So to clarify, it's the highest volume of like finished packaged goods food waste. So if
Okay.
you look at food waste statistics, it's fresh produce that is the most vulnerable to spoilage, like fruits and vegetables. But of like processed or packaged foods, bread is the highest volume category. So we're really passionate about doing something about that. And looking to the future, I think it's not okay that we waste so much bread today. I've read some studies that bakers are really disheartened because they know how much of their work goes to waste further down the line. And I think we in the future will all be formulating food with the approach that Vivien mentioned, holistically to deliver on shelf life, but taste, texture, and experience for consumers like it's a much more valuable asset than we treat it today. With the price of inflation, impacting food and just population growth, consumers need food that meets their needs and that they can enjoy and that just doesn't end up as waste. So it's a place that we can really make a difference. It's very high volume waste in bread, but it's lower value than, for example, meat, which has really high value food waste and also huge environmental impact. But if we can formulate to meet the needs of consumers and understand all of the reasons that it goes to waste today, whether that's mold, whether that's staleness, or that, it didn't taste the way somebody wanted it to, or they felt guilty because it was too fatty, too sweet, too salty, and they felt it was better to waste it than to eat those calories. If we can understand what is creating waste today and formulate to meet consumer needs into the future, I think we can elevate that and reduce those statistics dramatically.
Well, thank you for teaching me something new. I did not know this, and I knew that food waste was a thing, but I guess I didn't realize that our industry was such a large contributor to it volume wise. I'm wondering if there's a food waste calculator that's available to help bakers understand better how to combat this issue.
Yeah, there is, Katie. It's more of a food waste estimator, because calculating your own food waste usually involves quite a lot of measurement, like a life cycle analysis. I try to think of it as somebody following that loaf of bread home into the supermarket and seeing what happens to it down the line. But Kerry have been trying to help the industry solve the food waste problem in a really actionable way. So we have a tool that helps bakers understand the impact of extending shelf life and how much of a difference that could make to their food waste. And one of the options that we built into it is to use market averages for food types, so for bread, and per region, because those statistics vary dramatically between, for example, North America and in Europe. So if somebody wants to understand the impact they can have with shelf life extension, but doesn't have detailed analyses of their own food waste, they may have it in their plant. You know, the gold standard, I would say, is about 2% waste in a plant. But they wouldn't necessarily have that same insight for their loaf of bread once it goes to the retailer or into the consumer's homes or into the food service industry. So we amalgamated all the data that's out there and tried to make it really easy to use so bakers can see the difference they can make with a few days of extra shelf life, and then we can support them with the variety of ingredients to help them get there.
Very cool. And Vivien, earlier you were mentioning a particular ingredient that I would love to hear maybe the sciencey side of how it works. So I know you do biz dev now, but you're a PhD in this. And you were mentioning calcium propionate. What actually happens like on a cellular level, right? With calcium propionate that then helps extend the shelf life of goods?
Sure. So calcium
And,
propionate,
and feel
it's
free to talk nerdy to me because that's kind of what I'm looking for right now.
fantastic. Okay, great. So look, calcium propionate is a potent antimicrobial for mold control, and it is most active in the pH range below 5.5. So using calcium propionate in combination with other acids to lower the bread pH, as an example, as low as you can, is really important, because what that does is it maximizes the amount of undissociated acids in your application, and that will allow you achieve maximum efficacy. And that's because in the undissociated acid form, your propionic acid is most effective at curtailing essentially the metabolism of the mold. So it's preventing the mold from acquiring the nutrients that it needs in order to grow. And then, although the cells may not die, what happens is it is reducing its ability to grow out and extending your shelf life of your bread. So one of the things Kerry is doing as well is building predictive modeling tools to be able to estimate, based off your recipe, based off the amount of clean label antimicrobials that one can leverage for bakery or conventional antimicrobials, how much you need to put in and what the optimal pH should be based off of your desired target mold-free shelf life days.
So that's one ingredient. And thank you for breaking it down and actually making it somewhat understandable for me. Are there some other enzymes or other sort of ingredients that tackle or minimize food waste?
Absolutely. Enzymes are essentially biological catalysts, meaning they're special proteins with a very specific functionality. Um, and they can not only enhance the quality of baked goods and improve production efficiencies, reducing cost, but they're also key in eliminating food waste. As an example, enzymes, they delay the crystallization process of the starch, resulting in softer crumb structure. And then this enables a softer bread texture that consumers can enjoy the bread for longer by extending shelf life by those extra few days. Again, limiting loaves that are getting tossed, and ultimately reducing food waste. Similarly, enzymes are used in the cracker industry to maintain rigidity of crackers, so you don't have all those breakages, to again maximize to ensure that they ultimately get eaten versus getting thrown out.
And what are some other kind of steps along the way that you guys consider as you're, developing new tools, developing new ingredients that can help bakers kind of from the beginning of the process to the end? So What about the manufacturing process? What is Kerry doing to help bakers, again, with like that end goal of creating that great product that people like, that also stays shelf stable, minimizes food waste? Kind of, let's talk through the process and different steps along the way that can help bakers. And maybe if you feel good about talking about it, Emma, let's start with you.
I think we work a lot with consumer insights. So we're a B2B company and we want to make sure that our customers are meeting consumer needs. So food waste, about half of consumer food waste happens because of spoilage or textural issues, like Vivien mentioned, getting stale, but the other half is around consumer behavior. So if we all think into our homes of the decisions that we make when we pick something up and decide whether we put a little effort into eating it or reusing it or upcycling it, or whether we let that food go to waste, there is, a huge part of that is psychology based. So formulating with our customers to meet those consumer needs, to have products that they want to take off shelf. So it can be around, the convenient shelf life, the convenient storage and packaging, the right packaging size. There are a huge diverse portfolio of ingredients available to help extend the shelf life. But what does that consumer want from a label declaration point of view? Do they need something that's gluten-free, that's organic? Do they want, familiar ingredients like fermentates or something vinegar based? Or would they rather more cost-effective ingredients going into their food that makes a more affordable loaf of bread to feed their family? So understanding who the end consumer is really helps at the ideation stage for formulation. And then we have some really gifted technical salespeople that are both bakers and microbiologists who go into the plants and just look and measure things and help to understand any challenges that bakers might be having, uneven rise, warping, dough stickiness to the bowls, things that, cause rejections or waste that could be avoided at a plant level, which is, very beneficial to that manufacturer, but then also trying to predict any challenges that might come later in the supply chain at a retail level, a food service level, or a consumer level. So, helping that baker formulate a bun that is bouncy and appealing, even if it's been stacked, 16 packages high back of house at a food service place, or that's going to, withstand temperature fluctuations, getting to a retailer in a certain region, and just help it be that product that somebody wants to eat instead of having it go to waste.
And you just talked a little bit, and something that stuck out to me in my mind as you were describing that is I guess the waste of stickiness to bowls and the stickiness of dough. Kind of what can be done there in the manufacturing process? Like, what sort of ingredients are we talking about there, Vivien?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to enzymes again to really make sure that we have really strong process efficiency during the end-to-end production process. So we definitely have enzymes that improve efficiencies, leading to increased capacity and again limiting food waste. But also I think it's if there is waste, one of our ambitions is to understand how can we achieve a fully circular economy. So if you take stale bread as an example, we have leveraged enzymes to break it down so that it can be used as potentially a substrate in the brewing industry as a fermentation media component. So again, it's achieving that fully circular economy.
So from bread to brew.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I knew that we share some similarities with the beer industry, and that's always fun to hear even more that you didn't know about, or that I didn't know about. And also, I'm wondering, you've mentioned probiotics earlier on. Like, I just think of probiotics as something that is in yogurt, right? Has all the great things that make your belly happy, right? I haven't heard of it as much in bread products. Is it being used now? Are these probiotics being used? Do they get baked? I'm just, again, my only reference is yogurt and dairy. And,
Great question.
There's not a cooking process. And I just know the cooking process does weird things to, ingredients like this. And so maybe talk to me a little bit about probiotics and what they do and maybe their role in food waste, or maybe they're just a nice thing to have?
Sure. So I think if we think about probiotics, and you're rightly saying, probiotics started in the dairy industry, and then they have evolved beyond dairy into beverages, into snacks, and the next logical evolution is into bakery. And we're already seeing it in some cases in bakery. I would say Kerry is fortunate that we have a portfolio of robust, process tolerant probiotics that can be applied into applications like cookies, cakes, and muffins. And Kerry's probiotics, we have clinical research associated with them in relation to impact on digestive health, and in some cases, immune health benefits that are conferred. And as you mentioned, what's really important with a probiotic is that, is it there at the end of shelf life to really confer that health benefit on the consumer? So Kerry has a lab where we can enumerate what you put in, what came out, is it still viable, and tie that back to our clinical science as well. So I think we're seeing this movement into the bakery space.
And bringing in the marketing person here, is this something that some of your consumer studies are saying that folks are interested in?
Yes, one of the big things that comes out of our consumer studies is that people would much rather get things that are healthy for them from their diets than as supplements that they have to take every day. So if you can find a natural home in something that somebody's already happily eating or happily feeding their children for them to get a health benefit from, that's easy to store, that doesn't really change from their routine, it's a great home for something like a probiotic. So you just have to find a home that somebody's naturally eating every day where it can stay stable, and it's a great place for somebody to be getting health benefits.
All right. So in a few years, I'll see bread on the shelf that'll be probiotic filled, and now I've seen a few that have like vegetables in them and all of that too. So, all right. Well, we'll keep our eyes open on that. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
Yeah, look, I think the health and wellness trend continues, and I think it's sugar reduction, salt reduction, fat reduction, with all these different technologies to really optimize the nutritional profile. That's a key strategic focus, for Kerry, and where we can really deliver value to our customers.
And Emma, last word.
I would say watch this space. I see consumers redefining value, which is where they're looking for better value options that are more affordable and offsetting some of their previous priorities, while also absolutely rebelling and treating themselves in specific areas where they feel they really benefit from, something that a product has to offer, whether it's, taste, decadence, or health benefits. So to just watch that consumer segmentation, because they're actively changing their spending habits in a way that's really interesting to watch.
All right. Well, maybe I'll have a probiotic pie in a few years. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining Bake to the Future today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And listeners, please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing hello@americanbakers.org. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts: Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Ghana.